The story begins by telling how Kentigern was in some wild, untouched land near his monastery. He was busy praying when along came a hairy, naked madman. He was called Lailoken, the text tells us. Certain people say that he was Merlin, who was regarded by the Britons as unique in his powers of prophecy. Kentigern asked the man why he was wandering the forest in this terrible state, and of course whether he was a Christian. Lailoken said, "I am a Christian, although guilty of so great a crime, suffering in the wilderness the evil fate which was predestined for me, to live with the beasts for my sins, since I do not deserve to suffer my punishment in the company of men. For I was the cause of the slaughter of all the slain who were killed in the battle, well known to all the inhabitants of this country, which was fought in the plain that lies between Lidl and Carwanach. In this battle also the sky began to yawn open above me, and I heard a voice like the sound of thunder, speaking to me from heaven, 'Lailoken, Lailoken, because you alone are guilty of the blood of all those who have been killed. You alone will pay the penalty for the sins of all. For you will be handed over to the angels of Satan, and you will consort with wild beasts until the day of your death.' At first Kentigern felt great compassion for Lailoken, who was without clothing or shelter or proper food. He wondered how the poor man could survive at all, but as often happens to the homeless and confused, the bishop and his priests soon grew tired of Lailoken. He would perch on a rock near the church and shriek strange and frightful prophecies when they were at their prayers. They couldn't make sense of much of what he said, and they certainly didn't believe him, and yet they couldn't resist writing some of them down. Then one day Lailoken appeared when Kentigern was saying morning mass. He shouted and wailed and insisted that the bishop should come out and give him Holy Communion, for he was about to die, he said. By this time, Kentigern had lost his compassion for Lailoken. He didn't believe what he said and refused to waste the gift of the sacrament on him. However, the priests offered to go out and speak to Lailoken. Kentigern told them to go and ask him how he was going to die. They went and spoke to him, and he said, "I shall die today, crushed by stones and cudgels." Kentigern did not believe this, so he sent the priests again to ask them for a more truthful story. This time, Lailoken said, "Today my body will be pierced by a sharp wooden stake, and thus my spirit will fail." When the priests reported back to Kentigern, he replied that Lailoken was being inconsistent as usual, telling lies. However, the priests were concerned for poor Lailoken and went to speak to him a third time, hoping he would give them a more truthful account of what he thought was going to happen to him. This time Lailoken said, "Today I will terminate my present life by drowning." Now even the priests had had enough and called Lailoken a liar and a fool. Then Lailoken began to weep and pray to God that the bishop would come out of his church and give him Holy Communion. The priests went to Kentigern and begged him to give poor Lailoken what he craved, and finally Kentigern agreed. He went out and blessed Lailoken. He heard his confession and gave him the sacrament. After that, Lailoken said to him, "If temporal life finishes for me today, just as you have heard from me, the most outstanding kings of Britain, the holiest of the bishops, and the noblest of the lords will follow me during this year." Once this was done, Lailoken ran away into the forest. Later that day, he met with some shepherds who were employed by a certain king called Meldred. The shepherds attacked Lailoken with stones and cudgels. Wounded and dying, Lailoken fell down the steep bank of the river Tweed near Drummelier. He landed on a sharp stake that was part of a fish trap and was impaled. His head fell forward into the water, and he drowned. And in that year, Ruther Kyle, the ruler of Strathclyde, Kentigern, Bishop of Glasgow, and the noble Lord Morthach all died, fulfilling Lailoken's prophecy. A further section of the text, perhaps added later by a different author, we can't be sure, offers an explanation for the fatal attack on Lailoken. It tells how a few days earlier a local king called Meldred had made Lailoken his prisoner for a time in the town of Drummelier because his strange poetic prophecies amused him. During this time, Lailoken had extracted a promise from Meldred that he would provide a burial place for him, where the Powsel burn flows into the Tweed. "For it will come to pass," Lailoken told him, "after a few days, that I shall die a threefold death." Meldred agreed to do this, and Lailoken went on to tell Meldred that his queen had been unfaithful to him. The queen denied this, but Meldred believed Lailoken, and so it was the queen who had stirred up the shepherds against him and brought about his death. Meldred, true to his word, had Lailoken buried in the place he had requested, which Meldred had previously chosen as his own place of burial. If you'd like to delve a little deeper into the topics in my videos, you might enjoy taking one of my online classes. You can find out more about them at the link which is on your screen now. You can also support my work on Ko-fi or by becoming a patron. You'll also find free content to read on my Patreon page and on my website. All the links are in the description.